Well, it's our first live show following episodes 1 and 2 of Masters of the Air that aired last night. This is a Saturday morning, and John and I are here to talk about those. So if you're watching this after it's been recorded, please subscribe and come be a part of our conversations in the future. Okay, John, let's talk about the first episode. What did you think?
A lot to like. I mean, of course, I'm a huge fan. Um, the production, epic as far as visual. I mean, and I know online, I've been online and stuff. Some people kind of nitpick the CGI and stuff, but overall, it's a wonderful viewing. And, when you watch the first episode, there's quality there. And you can tell they spent the money. Of course, we've talked on other shows about the epic proportions of the budget and everything. And then first thing I want to tell the viewers and stuff, I don't want to be one of those people that read the book and just complain that, don't follow the book. You have people get,
Well, it better not. I think it would need to be like a 12-month series to fill everything that you just read in that book.
So. Oh, I know. And there's nothing worse than watching a show or a movie with somebody that's read the book and they're going, well, that don't follow the book and stuff. But not to be a spoiler for those viewers that's not read the book, it follows it pretty good.
That's not a spoiler. I think that's really good to know, actually, because potentially, at least for a while, I'd say most people aren't going to read the book or won't have read the book. So I think it's really good to tell them, hey, it does follow the book. And that way, when you watch it, because I know I thought, wow, is this really historically accurate? Because sometimes Hollywood will take something and extrapolate or Hollywoodize it. But we're able to say, yes, that's actually how it was written in the book. That's what really happened. I think that adds a lot to the scenes to say, this really happened.
Oh yeah, and and you can tell, and this is where they probably spent the money, the attention to details, and there was a lot of details. For me, and I'd urge everybody to read the book because the book does start out before the mini series, and it does kind of set up a little bit about the theories of warfare, the theories of the 8th Air Force, why it was so, that was kind of left out in the movie, in the mini series in the first episode, but you got to start somewhere. And I don't blame them from where they started and everything. But yeah.
Well, I would like to make a commentary on that
topic,
actually. So here's my feeling. I'm going to come into this show. I know we both are going to come into this show very honest. I think it's important to have these conversations, and when we bring people on, or if you're watching and you want to make a comment, and we'll share it. So I did not care for the opening of the movie, and I thought about it, and I'm not a screenwriter, but I am a writer and a storyteller. I'm a publisher, and I thought they either needed to do like Band of Brothers and start it more with the training ahead of time, or because what happened for me is I felt like the characters were just thrown on top of you. Was very disconnected. I didn't really understand the significance of the people I was seeing until much later. Yes. And everything they said felt cliche to me at first. And I thought, I hope I like this show. Now, once they got to England and they flew their first mission, woo, I mean, and we know that this was what happened, and it's intense. And like you said, I think that they did a phenomenal job of taking you in the plane and showing what they were dealing with. I was so drawn into the movie at that point. And I thought either they needed to start it like Band of Brothers, or they should have started like Saving Private Ryan, because the first 27 minutes is Omaha Beach, right? So you care about the characters, because you're watching what they're going through, and you just instantly have compassion for them, and you're concerned, and it's scary, and it's real. And I think if they had started the show in that first mission, where you're right there flying, the flak and the just everything they dealt with, they can't see the target, Spoiler alert, if you
Oh,
watch our show, you're going to hear about what
yeah,
happened.
especially if you
And
would.
then did a flashback to that bar scene. So now we see the pilot in the heat of battle. And then we go back. Now we care a little more about him and say, okay, he's got to go back home, and he's just a clean cut guy, and he's not a troublemaker. Like, I didn't get that until further into the film. I know they were trying to show it, but for me, the characters were not deep enough, and until we started to see them suffering and sacrificing for.
Well, I know exactly what scene you would have started it with when he's doing the nosedive to put the fire out.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That would have been your first scene, and then he
yeah.
gets out of that and all that, and then
Or even
flashback
just when
to the
they're
marksman.
flying and they're getting hit with flak, and
Yeah.
they can't see their target, and they had to abort.
Yes.
And you're like, are you kidding me? We just saw some planes go down and they didn't even get to hit the target, and you're just instantly drawn in. So I have to say, from that moment on, I loved the film. Up
Yeah.
until that moment, I was like, ugh, the things they were saying just felt canned, and I didn't really connect with the characters, and there's no depth to the characters, and I thought, uh-oh. But now I care, and it was just because of watching them. And so, yeah,
Well, the
that's
first
my
20
only.
minutes, they throw a lot of names at you.
Yeah.
You're trying to learn them, and it's a lot. I understand that. Now,
Yeah.
my only critique, well, I wouldn't say only critique, but my critique, you were talking about the scene about them going on the mission, couldn't even drop their bombs and stuff. After reading the book, and then, of course, in my book, I point out that mission wouldn't even counted towards their 25. Now, I know this whole miniseries is taking place 6 to 7 months before my papa entered the 8th Air Force over in Europe.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said that they hated the brass so much was you would go through a mission just like they showed. You risk your life. You lost 30 men on a mission, 3 planes, and it didn't even count towards your 25 to go home.
Yeah,
And
that's insane.
yes, and that's part of the stress factor of 25 missions. Actually, it was a lot more than 25 missions to survive. And
Wow.
but now, of course, this miniseries, it starts out maybe 7 months before that, and these were the first people over there. I don't know how much they were thinking about the 25 because they were still arrogant and thinking that this was going to be a cakewalk, and that there are planes and altitude, and that was a little bit about the book. The book talks about why they thought they were kind of invincible. They thought high altitude bombing, that artillery couldn't reach them.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that the flying fortresses, as far as the machine guns and the armament of the planes, that enemy fighters wouldn't be a problem. They thought they could defend themselves. So the book talks a little bit more about why they thought
Yeah.
what they thought, and then as soon as they got into action, it ain't working. And the first mission, I mean, you can tell when Buck and Bucky arrived in the Jeep, and he said, "I don't know what I just saw."
Was that the end of the first
Yes, in
episode,
the
or was
first
that
episode.
in the second one?
That was the end of the first.
Okay,
Yeah,
because yeah, that was significant, and again, that's where what they were saying started to resonate with me instead of feeling canned. Because he said, like, yeah, and you didn't need to say anything more. Like, yeah, what is this? And he turns to Buck. I think this was in the second episode actually, and he's like, you didn't tell me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was in the second episode. Maybe we can jump to there because they do have they have a mission in the second episode
yes,
also, and a lot happens. And then Buck turns to Bucky, or the other way around. I've got to figure out which Buck is Bucky, and he says, "You didn't tell me." And he's like, "I didn't know how to tell you."
yes,
And that maybe that was in the Jeep, but I just thought, wow, and then at the very end of the second episode, when they're hiding from the bombing, not hiding, but taking shelter from the bombing that was happening kind of off in the distance, and they're just like, this is suicide. Flying in the daylight these are suicide missions. How are we going to do it? And that's when, and it's in the trailer, and where the Austin Butler character, Clevin, said, we're just going to lead our boys through it. And I got to say, it meant so much. I had seen that multiple times watching the trailers, but to see the context in which he said that, it really impacted me. I kind of got chills, and that's kind of where the second episode ended. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I'm glad they showed the 2 episodes back to back. That was really important.
I think so, because I think they probably knew the first episode, I hate to say weaker. That's not exactly the word I'm thinking of, but they
Yeah.
knew that the second episode was more impactful. It hooked
Yeah.
you better. And I
Yeah.
think that's one reason why they decided. But I also wanted to point out, this goes back to the first episode before, when Buck is sending or Bucky is sending Buck off on that first mission. Somebody made a comment on social media that they had to watch it a second time to realize how important that scene was when he was trying to hand him the $2 bill. You know, the
Oh,
lucky deuce.
yeah.
You know, he didn't tell him what he
Wow.
was getting into, but when you watch it a second time, you see where he knows my buddies might not come back.
Yeah.
And then of course the Jeep scene when they're riding back going, why didn't you tell me? And I think he was trying to tell him in his way, you know, the lucky
Yeah.
deuce, the $2 bill.
That's a
And
good, wow. That, I'm glad you pointed that out. I was so concerned about so many things that scene kind of went right over me. My other complaint, if and this might just be me, but I was having such a hard time understanding what all they're saying, and partly because they're masked
yes,
during parts of it, and so they're kind of muffled, as it should be. But I was just like, what are they saying? I'm personally watching the film closed caption.
me too.
And
Yes,
when I turned that on, I started going, oh, I wouldn't have caught that, what he just said, or that name
yes.
wouldn't have registered. So, there's a lot of noise, of course, but for some reason, for me, that the talking and the sounds going on around it just aren't mixing. And it could be my settings, but I don't know. I'm just putting it out there in case there's anybody else that might be struggling with that. You might want to put the closed captions on, because I'm enjoying it better knowing I'm not missing something important that they're saying.
I
So,
think that's where a lot of comments said that when they watched it the second time, they enjoyed it a little bit more,
mm,
because I think they're probably doing that. They're catching more of the details. And I hand it to them. You know, there's two different directions you can go with a movie, or you know yourself with writing. You can include the accents, like the New York accents. Now, for me, New York and Boston
mhm.
accents kind of hard for me to follow. And of course, yeah, I'm a mountain. You can hear my mountain accent, but they put it in there, and it shows where, you know, and I think they did that on purpose to show what these men were from all over the country. And then
Yeah.
of course the scene in that bar in Greenland where they were putting the pins in on the map, and you know that was
Mhm.
another, you know, trying to show, hey, you know, these people from all over the country, and you have all these different accents
Yeah.
and
That,
everything.
and that was a really good way to be able
Yeah,
to show where Bucky was from. You know, I'm from Casper, and he sticks it and like, oh, you're the first. I thought that was a creative way to be able to introduce. I like it when things are creative and not just spoken. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Enforced. And so that was a really good scene. I
And then
love the bike race. You know,
well,
thought
and
that was,
it's
I was
funny.
so into that.
You know, of course, in my book, you know, and I gave you the pictures of my papaw. You know, there's a lot of pictures of him on a
I
bicycle on his base at Bury St. Edmunds.
I
And
thought about that. You do
yes,
have about
and
3 pictures in
and
your book.
mhm.
And for anybody who's joining us and don't quite know who we are, why we're talking about this, and we're such experts, but over my shoulder here, we have this. This is the Masters of the Air, and this is A Boy from Cracker's Neck, which John wrote from the stories told to him by his grandfather, who was a B-17 bomber pilot. And there's pictures of him in there on a bike. So that bike race probably happened, you know, maybe
Oh,
not inside like that, but
absolutely. And you know, and I'll tell you one thing: the first two episodes also showed very early on, and my papa always talked about that. And you know, and I've referred to the quote from "Tale of Two Cities." You know, it was the best of times, worst of times. I mean, it showed right off. These men went through some horrific life and death situations, and 6 to 8 hours later, they're at a bar dancing.
yeah. Mm.
You
And
know,
it's
the
accurate.
contrast,
That's
and that
accurate.
is accurate. I mean, that
Yeah.
actually happened. And you know,
Yeah.
so it was the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah.
And that constant going back and forth between living life to the fullest to dying.
Yeah.
You know, and the first two episodes shows it.
Yeah, I think they've conveyed a lot of really important information. And I don't think we should give away the comedy or the humor, but there were definitely a few moments where something was said that was just hilarious. And I'm sure that there's well, I know that you wrote in your book how they were funny because you had to laugh, or you
Lived
know,
in the moment, lived
yeah.
entirely in the
So
moment. Yes.
So they captured the humor as well in this film so far. There's a few things that were said, and I was just like, oh, that's great, So
I'm gonna actually critique something in episode 2
okay,
that I wish they would have expounded just a little bit more, because in the book, this is a big deal. It's a big deal in my book also, is when they were at the pub and the RAF, the English officers, were there, and they were
yeah,
discussing the difference between nighttime and daytime bombing. Okay. Well, they talked about how one was safer than the other, but now statistically, let me tell you, the RAF experienced tremendous losses too.
yeah,
Flying at night's not an easy thing either, but they didn't have to deal with the fighter planes.
yeah.
So in a
That's
way, it was safer. But what they didn't talk about in the miniseries in episode 2 was one of the reasons that the Americans chose to bomb in the daytime was they could be more precise, and they were trying to miss civilian targets.
yes.
And
Yeah.
that was
Or
the
the
whole
RAF would just let it go.
yeah. And they in the miniseries talked about that the British had been fighting the Germans for 4 years before we got over there, so their feelings towards bombing civilians was much different than at that time. The 8th Air Force was, we're only going to bomb military that was our plan, and that's our mission. Now, of course, we all know that sometimes bombs scattered everywhere and they did bomb civilians, but that wasn't their target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until later, which is in your book when you wrote about
Yes, and
Operation,
also in Masters of the Air,
yeah,
that's
Gamora. So
yeah,
we'll see if that comes up later. But yeah, I love that they were able to show a lot of important details regarding the differences between the two, just in that scene and in that closing scene of the first episode. I think we really get set up for what's coming.
yes.
Um, I know I looked ahead at, I think next week's episode is like, I want to say 54 or 58 minutes long. We only get one a week after this. And the week after that is like 48 minutes long. It's like, but it's good. I look at that. I think, oh, I want more than that. The second episode just flew by. When it ended, I said, is that it? It's over
Yeah.
already? So, which is a good thing. It just means that I was so in it and the time flew by as you watched it. And they did a great job of taking you up in the skies and being there in those experiences. I think they've just, now I wondered, because I've seen Memphis Belle, of course, got Memphis
Yes.
Belle above me here. And I wondered how it would compare to Memphis Belle and their scenes. And I think that I think they did a good job of being like Band of Brothers, where you
Yes.
really felt like you were there, in those battles. And I
Well,
felt like I was there with them, and it wasn't actors.
yeah.
So
One thing you brought up, I'm glad you brought up Memphis Belle, because that's a favorite movie of mine, just because it's a passion, and because
mhm.
of my granddad. But the one thing I will say that Masters of the Air and the miniseries has already done that Memphis Belle didn't do, and I'm not sure, just a different era in making movies, was the attention to detail, the frostbite.
Mm.
And
Oh, yes.
how they had, and if you read the book or if you read history and all that, the weather conditions, fighting where it's 25 to 50 below zero, frostbite. I mean, as we lost as many, airmen, dying due to the weather conditions than we did enemy action or getting shot.
Mhm.
And so I was glad to see, they showed the frostbite. They showed, a little bit about the oxygen, if your oxygen mask got hurt or got damaged, how you passed out. So they already showed
Right.
that,
Yeah.
how important that is. And, the hands with they couldn't even take their gloves off if they're,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That was, at first I said, in fact, at first and reveal my ignorance, maybe I was like, did he burn his hands on the gun? And my husband said, no, it was so cold. His skin stuck to him. Like, oh, and so that was really, yeah, that was a great detail. It just shows the attention to detail, like you said,
yes,
that they were able to really take you there and show what was hard. And even flying there, I feel like, and I've said this before, you in a fast-paced show, you can't capture the tension and the adrenaline of just waiting to get to your target and how long it really would take. But so there's a little bit of that missing. And of course, but I think they still did a good job of just the guy that just kept throwing up and trying to, get his bearings together. And you see, at least you appreciated how much he was suffering along the way, even if they couldn't show how long it actually felt for them. But
and also I thought that was great, showing the lack of technology. I mean, they didn't have GPS. They were having to rely on maps and rulers and all that. So, it made me wonder, and I was thinking, gosh, if your navigator got shot, I mean,
yeah, that's fine. Oh, that was one of the, I won't give away the funny comments, but one of the funny comments was kind of having to do with the navigator. So, but anyway, so any final thoughts as we,
very good. There's a lot to like about this miniseries. You and I talked on other shows about the reviews and stuff being a little mixed and stuff, the character development, but let's give it time. I mean, I think that character development's coming. You saw that in episode 2, and might have been lacked a little bit in episode 1, but the excellent, put it this way, I am very pleased with what I've seen so far. I'm glad this is a story that's getting told. It needed to be documented. I know, a lot of comments online that I've read, people miss having those interviews like Band of Brothers, actual veterans. I even sent you a comment going, I wish 10 to 13 years ago when I kind of started this process that somebody would have just gotten some interviews with these 8th Air Force.
Yeah, even just to have some,
even just to maybe
archived interviews to just sort of plug in. Gosh, I wonder if those exist. I mean, that might have been possible, because I know there was a movement, I think a Library of Congress movement, to preserve the stories of veterans. I wonder if there are some that could have been. Yeah, that's a good thought.
And we don't know. Maybe at the end of the miniseries they show a lot of this. We don't know that yet. I know when I personally went to saw the 8th Air Force Museum down in Georgia near Savannah, they have a lot of videos playing of 8th Air Force veterans. So maybe they will fit something in. But I wish they could have gotten some of that and then put it on each episode, because that was a fan favorite of Band of Brothers. Because even if it wasn't the exact character you were watching, but just to have a real veteran talk about their experiences. And
you know what? I just a challenge accepted. You didn't know you were giving me a challenge or us a challenge, but I'm gonna put this out there. I think this coming week, let's spend some time and see if we can find some videos on YouTube. I'm sure that we can. I'm sure they're out there, and maybe we can grab a few segments to show here. If I can find a few, we can share the screen and just maybe we can listen to some of those actual veterans talking about it and let them come be a part of our show. So maybe we can make that happen. So
one of the reasons I wrote my book was just trying to preserve my papa's stories growing up and being in the 8th Air Force. But looking back, I wish we would have videotaped him talking.
Oh gosh, yes.
I have some videos of him talking about growing up and stuff, but I didn't have the war videos and all that. So that would have been wonderful to have had. And maybe there's some viewers out there. I hope somebody will have some home videos of family members. That'd be wonderful. I hope they can share with us. So
come here in this virtual studio with us. We definitely want to have people who are following come and talk with us, as well as post chats. But if you have somebody in your family that flew, come and talk about them. Come give us your perspective. If you're like John and you heard their stories, even if they're not here to tell them anymore, you can come and share them. So we'd love to include that. So with that, I would just encourage everyone who's watching this to subscribe to the channel, because we will continue to do the live stream shows every Saturday after each episode while the Masters of the Air is premiering. And then ideally we'll keep it going, because there's so many things we can talk about and stories to be shared. And so if you subscribe, you get the countdown and know that it's coming. So, and with that, I think that we will end our first live show and appreciate everybody who came and watched. And we'll see you in a week.
Thank you very much.